thanks so much for joining us on the Pure Heart Church podcast today. My name is Zach Good. I have the awesome opportunity to be the producer of this podcast, and I think we've got a great episode for you today. So whether you're part of our church community or you're just tuning in, I'm so glad that you're with us today. Let's jump right in with our hosts, Heath Bottomley and Matt Nystrom.
Hey, welcome to the Pure Heart Church podcast. So glad you're joining us today. We have some amazing guests, some exciting stuff, and we're going to jump right into it. So, Heath, you and I were talking about recently, we're a little bit older, and we can look back.
I don't remember
reflect.
saying that I was older.
Well,
I remember saying that I felt like you were
Everybody
getting
else
older.
said you were older.
Oh, perfect. Oh, great. As long as it's everyone else.
That's what it was.
Yes,
no,
love that.
But we're a little bit older, but there gets to a point where you kind of go, you think back with nostalgia on some of the things of your life. And one of those things is some of the first jobs you ever had. Because that's kind of you don't know what you want to do. You're trying to just find something most of the time. Your parents are
trying to make money.
Trying to make money.
Yeah.
What was some of your first couple jobs?
Well, before I dive in, mine are going to sound very lame in comparison. I've just scratched the surface on some of the jobs I've heard that you've done. And it seems like you have lived for 450 years in order to do all the jobs that you've lived. You're like, yeah, the one time when I was delivering feed to, I'm like, what? That's
when
a
I was
job?
servicing the space shuttle.
It's like, I mean, it was just,
I was on the refueling team.
it was just a menial labor, nothing really big. I'm like, what? But so my first job that I had was working for Discount Tire.
Oh, okay.
And so I was still in high school doing that, and I was amazed because they were offering me $5.25 an hour.
Oh, yeah, of that.
And minimum wage was $4.25.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was like, of course I'm going to take that.
Now, did you ever? I had a friend who worked for Discount Tire, and he said there's some tires that he hated to open up.
There's a few, so for different reasons, like there's some that just like they reek because there's stuff in them, and everything.
Okay.
And some people have used sprays in them and everything like that. And they're just a mess. If it's been in there for a while, it's old, it's gross.
The stuff that like when you get a flat, they're filling it up and it's like all just, you got to scoop it out.
It's nasty.
Don't do that to your Discount Tire people. It's public service.
But so the first week that I was there, I didn't realize either that they were like, hey, you may want to bring some gloves. And everything. I'm like, but with gloves, it was hard for me to unscrew the lug nuts because you zap them out or whatever. But you would to get them off or whatever and everything. You want to finish them up, and so I'm like, gloves. These are, and then I realized why. It's because when you're rolling them back to the bay, occasionally you'd have tires that are separated, and what it means by that is that the rubber has disconnected, and I had no idea that there was metal in them.
You just thought they were nice rubber tires?
Yeah, and so the first tire that I rolled back like that, I'm like, something stung my hands, and I look, and I just slashed open my hands because of the metal was separated, and just rolling it just went slice, like the worst paper cut ever with metal. Wow. Metal cut. So that was not only a learning experience, but
and you do that once. You learned that lesson one time.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm putting on gloves, and I'm double wrapping my hands because I'm never having that happen again. But it was also, that summer was also the year that it hit 122 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
And we're in the bays, it's just swamp coolers.
Yeah.
It's not like there's air conditioning units in there. And that day, our swamp coolers were struggling.
Oh, my God.
And we're like, I don't know about you, but it feels really, really hot in here. And they're like, nah, it's fine. And then we go, and I see the news later, and it's hit 120. They wouldn't let planes fly. And here I am, a senior in high school.
Swapping out tires.
Yeah, swapping out tires.
He's young.
Completely grease, and, it was a mess.
My first job was when I was 14, I worked at Boy Scout camp. So I was really into Boy Scouts. I was the uber nerd that I was like looking through the book.
Were you that kid on Up that had all of the...
Oh, I was. That's
okay.
a perfect example. It was like that because I actually would look through the manuals to find like patches that no one else would ever look for, but it's like the community awareness patch or something.
Paperclip folding badge.
And you had to like, go talk to 5 businesses about community. And I do that because it's like, one more patch. Like I was the patch kid. But I worked at Boy Scout camp when I was 14. I did small boat sailing and taught rowing, and I was also a lifeguard. And so, yeah, and this is in Kansas. And so
you were a lifeguard?
I was a lifeguard.
See, yeah, another thing. I'm like, I'm adding that to the list of things I didn't know.
Employees I've had here at the church at one time, they're like, what all have you done? And so I started writing it all down. And it was like one of those yellow page things that notebook or whatever, and literally it's a couple pages of stuff I've done.
It's like you were a character in Quantum Leap.
That's actually a good example. I might use that in the future. But it's not like
my life.
I purposely switch. I do stuff and I enjoy it and whatever, but it's just things catch my interest and and opportunities come along. And so I was working at Boy Scout camp and doing all this. We'd live up there and on the camp. And so I remember though the first year, here I am, this young guy, and I want to be tan, I want to look, good, and I wasn't allowed to be dyeing my hair at the time. My mom said, and so I started spraying sun in to start bleaching it out.
Nature's gonna take care of me.
And about the third, fourth week, my mom's saying to my sister, she says, "Look at his hair; it's just really fading out so nicely. Sun's like, if you only knew,
if you only knew."
And so
this is my rebellion.
Yeah, rebellion, 90s rebellion. Like bleach hair, sun in, and so I'm at the beginning of the camp. Each camp week, you would have the swim test for all the kids that are coming in. And I'd only been up at the camp a couple days, and we're all lifeguards, and these kids are coming down, section after section of them to do these tests, and you just got to make sure that none of the kids are drowning.
Seems simple enough.
Simple enough. And what I
are you drowning?
I was like. One of the guys, he was like super tan. He's the guy that back then he was in the tanning beds, and he had this tanning accelerator. And he goes,
that scares me.
He goes, "Oh, this stuff is amazing. That's how I got so dark and stuff." And I tan pretty well if I've been in the sun for a while, but I had no tan at that point. It was the beginning of summer, and so I go, "Could I borrow some of your tanning accelerator?" And he goes, "Sure." I put it on, and now, tanning accelerator is the opposite of suntan lotion. It is stuff that literally sucks in all of the sun's rays.
Yes.
And
areas of the country aren't getting enough sun because you are soaking it all up.
Yes. It all in. And so I'm standing in the sun all day. And
it's also called cooking. Yeah.
Cooking, essentially. At one point, the head of the lifeguards, he comes out, he's like, "Dude, did you put on sunblock today?" And I go, No, I put on tanning accelerator. He's like, "You need to get it out of the sun." And so he pulls me out of the sun. I ended up with like 2nd-degree burns on my shoulders.
Oh my gosh.
I could barely put on a shirt because it hurt so bad. So little newsflash, don't use tanning accelerator when you have that. Probably not a good thing if you just want to care for your skin in the first place.
If you want to, live a long time.
Yeah, but so if someday I have like shoulder skin cancer, I'll know why. So first jobs, that's
painful.
It's the things you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Hey, and by the way, I'm picking up on this and everything, is the fact that your voice is it's very throaty.
It's a little Bob Hake-ish more than normal. Young man. I can't even do it.
to reference generationally too, it's very Punky Brewster. I don't know if
very throaty. Yeah, I have a little whatever it is, little funky like back of the throat thing that just started. I actually lost my voice yesterday and got it back a little bit today. So
just in time for me to make sure that you lose it by getting you on the podcast.
It's true, and that's why Zach said, "Hey, keep this segment short because otherwise Matt's not going to have any voice."
Well, he comes in with the hook. He said, "From now on, we're going to cut you off because you guys just ramble. Aimlessly.
What are you guys doing? You just are mindless. He didn't say idiots, but we felt it.
He just came in the room now, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
All right.
So let's go ahead and we're going to jump on into the rest of our segments.
It's going to be good. Here we go.
So most of you know that my role here at Pure Heart is the online campus experience pastor, and along with running our video art studio for creative teams. And I actually have encountered a couple amazing ladies that are part of our online campus, that this is part of their church. This is part of their faith. And so I want to talk about a little bit, what does that look like to do church online and have that be a part of growing and maturing and what God's doing in our lives. And I'm so excited too because they're both in town, and you're actually in town temporarily, but you're in town all the time. So I get to have them on the podcast. So welcome, ladies. And if you could just tell us your names and a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Victoria Hendrix. I've been a member of this church since I was born, basically. I became a member of the online church when I went away for college, and then COVID hit, and I came back, and I'm still a strong member of the online college. I'm currently going to school at Midwestern to become a doctor, and just it's been really nice to be part of the online campus.
That's cool. What type of doctor?
I don't know yet. Maybe family med.
Okay, all
I don't
right.
know. I went in thinking neurology, and then we went over the neuro unit in school, and I'm kind of like, So I don't know. As the Lord leads, but I don't know. We'll see.
All of it, I'm sure, is going to be awesome because that's
it's all very
that's some heady stuff.
interesting. But third and fourth year is when you do like your rotations.
Okay.
You get to like sample all the little pieces, and so that's when I think God's going to be like, this is the one.
That's cool. I love that. Very cool. And tell us about yourself.
My name is Lisa Walker, and I am a teacher at North Valley Christian Academy, and I also coach. And my husband and I have a family business that takes a bit of our time. We're both on our second marriage, so we got married in 2014, and we were looking for a church, and we ended up here at Pure Heart around 2015. But when COVID hit is when I discovered the online and really started to watch more online.
That's cool. And your role is, besides the family business, is it was so fascinating to me.
Well, what I coach?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I coach cheer.
Yeah.
So it's a year-round sport. It's not like basketball that's just a winter season. It's all year long. And it's the fun part. I enjoy teaching, but you really get to connect with students when you get to coach. It's a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
And it's so much time.
And just the fact that what I love about coaching is that for the rest of their life, I mean, that just integral part of who they are and developing skill sets and stuff, like for the rest of their lives, you were that person in their life.
Yeah, my motto to them is the most important thing we have is relationships, and it's not, what kind of job we have or car we drive, clothes we wear. It's the relationships that we have with each other. And working at a Christian school, even when I worked public school, I always talked about the most important relationship that you can have is with your Heavenly Father and your Lord Jesus Christ.
I love that. That's amazing.
So,
it's going to be cool to be at a Christian school, to be able to share your faith.
Yeah, for
fantastic. I love it.
That's cool.
And then you, before you decided to be a doctor, you were debating between that and something else. So tell us about what that looked like.
So I started shooting competitive shotgun in the 4th grade. I got into it kind of for gun safety and whatnot, and then as how competitive I am, I really got into it, just the competition side, and just made great friends. But in high school, I went to like a junior Olympic training camp up in Colorado Springs, the Olympic Training Center, and I came back from that just really impassioned about the Olympics and the possibility that like I could pursue something like that. And so my mom and I got up like every morning in high school, especially my senior year, at like 6 a.m., went to the shooting range before school. And then I eventually made Team USA my senior year of high school. And then I went to college at Liberty University in Virginia, and I kept shooting shotgun there, and I went to Olympic trials. But kind of around like end of freshman year, sophomore year, it became pretty obvious that it was either Olympics or becoming a doctor. And God was really pushing me that it was doctor, which it was hard. It was a lot of like soul searching because those are both very big dreams, right?
And very different dreams.
Very different, very different lifestyles and friends and circles. And so, I'm here now, decided to become a doctor, and God's really blessed me through that. It's been really cool, and it was the right choice, 100%, but so I've transitioned from that. Still shoot a little bit here and there and whatnot, and I shot in college. I became team captain for my college team. We won nationals. It definitely was like, it's still a part of my life, but it shifted from the Olympics to more of like something fun that's been able to kind of just support me, help me relax when I'm studying during med school.
It's so cool. And I think probably a lot of people, for those who are just listening and not watching it on YouTube, like it's not like you're a person they probably would expect to be you're a person that you go, oh, like they could, like they're,
I'm not
person next door type of like, it's not like you got like 6 shooters on you or anything like that.
100%.
You're very like,
most people are pretty surprised when they see me and hear that about me, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
that's cool though.
Yeah.
But it is, in all fairness, it probably does come a little bit from your dad.
Oh yeah, 100%.
He likes guns. So
he does very much.
So, part of why we're here is just talking about the online campus. And so for those that don't know, the online campus, it became something that developed from COVID. You both kind of mentioned that how, hey, we started watching online during COVID. Before that, Pure Heart had always just live streamed whatever happened in the room, the fly on the wall experience, whatever was on the screens, I maybe is a better way of saying it, that the people in the room saw. That's what the online audience saw. And that's what Most churches do. That's what the majority of churches do. And then suddenly we all hit COVID, and it's like, wait a minute, there's nothing to broadcast. What do we do when everybody's at home and we can't gather, and that, trying to follow the laws of the land and the things that were happening here in Arizona suddenly became a huge challenge. And what was funny is here suddenly the entire church like flowed through my department. And I'm like, okay, we're the video arts department. Okay,
Yeah.
What do we need to film? What do we need to do? And then a couple of the lead pastors on our team, they said, they go, we need someone to like be hosting or kind of facilitating the online campus. I go, yeah, who do you want me to film for that? And they go, we think you should. And I go, because I don't have enough to do already. like, okay. But I'd had some back in the day before I was in church ministry stuff. I was doing construction and defect litigation and estimating and stuff that has nothing to do with my job now. But I always had a passion to be like, what if I would be an actor? And so I would go dabble with some acting kind of stuff and take some classes in between jobs. And I'd be like, should I move to LA or New York? And then like someone would offer me really good money. I'm like, do I go be a waiter in LA for like the next 30 years and never make it? Or do I go take this good paying job? So what was interesting is here, moving into the video role that God called me into here at Pure Heart about 10 years ago, I really get comfortable behind the camera of telling other people's stories and highlighting other things. And suddenly then God goes, no, I want you to be back in front of the camera. And so it was some of the skills and training that I learned back then I got to suddenly utilize. However, you go, what does it look like for church to be online? And in a time when people are scared, people are fearful, like if we think back, it's always easy to look at stuff in hindsight, but what were some things you guys were going through during that time mentally and emotionally as you're trying to figure out your faith in the midst of you couldn't go to church physically?
Well, you kind of led on to the fact that people were scared. I mean, and it was such a scary time. And we used to sit in the living room together as a family. So then at least it got to bring us together all together and be able to watch and talk and worship and continue that during that time. Oddly enough, I'm the only one that continues to watch online. Everybody else goes to church, and I'm the only one that stays back.
Good clarification. They didn't all backslide.
No, they did not. They did not backslide. They do come.
Your family still loves Jesus.
Yeah, they do. And I do find myself attending in person during the summer when I'm not teaching. But when I have the teaching and the coaching and then the business on top of everything, it's such a nice opportunity to be able to just continue. But with that scary time of COVID, I think it helped keep our family a little bit more sane.
Yeah.
In all of that. So
I also
very
loved
grateful.
what you said, like us coming together as a family, because church a lot of times, and it's not this is wrong, but we suddenly all go to our own thing there, right? And the adults usually go to their service, and then the youth and the kids, and so suddenly now you're doing church as a family in a time that probably family is an important thing to be like engaging together.
Yeah, so COVID happened my freshman year of college. So I had just kind of found a church home back there, and I started going with friends, and then everything kind of shut down. And everyone was like, are we getting sent home? Are we not? The local churches, a lot of them back there are a few hundred people, so they're not nearly the size of what Pure Heart is now, or even was during COVID. And so I started really watching the live stream, and I'd meet with friends, and we'd put it up on the TVs, and we all kind of sit around together and watched it. And even after COVID and through it, we kept watching because the shotgun team, we travel on the weekends. We can't really go to a church service unless they have a Wednesday service, but then you're kind of doing homework because you're catching up from being gone all the weekend. And so having a service that we were able to watch on the road, or okay, let's move it to Monday and we can all watch it then, really worked for us, because then you're not losing that church aspect completely, but you're still able to have that kind of regular preacher, and you're not kind of jumping around.
Yeah, what a cool thing. I love that.
And to piggyback off of that, our daughter was in Iowa. So she was in college. So we would encourage her to watch online, and then we could all still talk together as a family.
That's
So
cool.
she was still being able to connect here with us, and having a discussion and things like that, while she was away at school.
That's cool. Yeah, in the beginning here, we go, what does church look like online? And so literally what we did was just copy what we do on the weekends and kind of, if you go back and watch it, it feels a little cringy in hindsight.
Yeah,
but you
they're
go
a
like,
little rough.
like it was like, okay, we all are on the stage singing to an empty room and we're
Yeah.
pretending like, or Pastor Dan, he's on the stage and we're filming him on the stage talking to an empty room. The camera was literally across the sanctuary, and it was, we were essentially replicating just what we always had done. And that quickly got unmanageable because you're like, there's only so much scaffolding you can build and cameras you can put on top of things to get them to the right height they need to be to it's not an environment that's conducive to capturing that type of thing for a post-production experience. And at the time, we had actually finished up some building remodels at Pure Heart, and the studio was like the last thing we were doing. And our original vision for this studio, which is what we're sitting in right now, where we do capturing and mixing, and where we do our teaching captures out of, and host moments and all that kind of stuff. But what we originally envisioned the studio is that it was supposed to be, hey, we're going to have volunteers mix for online the worship, and also then like maybe if we had an element that like a stand and greet that we used to do, hey, go and greet one another, maybe that person would jump into, a host would jump onto that and hey, we're glad you're joining us online if you want to, or something like that. But it was essentially the live stream experience. And as we begin to look at some of the analytics, well, two things happened. One, we did Easter, which we were 2 minutes from not having an Easter service. Like literally everything that could have gone wrong, it's a huge story, but everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. And we're like, upload. Like this is Easter and no one has Easter service. And we finally got it. And then suddenly it took off. Thousands of people suddenly connected to us. We're like, whoa, like people that we could see were not ones that would ever come here. And that's sort of had always been the give, like the give and take between live streaming services. It's like, well, we want people in the doors. And suddenly we go, this really isn't about people in the doors. Someone from, where'd you say your daughter was at?
Iowa.
Yeah. Iowa isn't going to walk through the door. Where had you been at? Over in Virginia. Like you're not walking through the door. So suddenly like, how are we, and then even other countries, which that was even weird too. You're like, how did they even discover this? And so it began to kind of be on a bit of a journey of like, what does an online campus look like? And so it went from having 5 songs that we sing like you would in church to like, oh, people just skip past that because it's just a different environment. And
Yeah,
so,
I skip past it.
Yeah, skip past it. I appreciate,
Yeah,
it's
we'll
a good
be honest
confession.
here.
You got it off your soul.
Off the chest, exactly.
And so we got dialed down to like, hey, what if we had 1 or 2 songs that are more, music video isn't the right term, but if you think of like something more visually engaging instead of just people on a stage, and mixing that down, and how would that even, how does music interpret to a home audience? How does a speaker, a pastor interpret to a home audience? When COVID got done, a lot of churches, they just went back to doing what they'd done. Live streaming is very easy. It's you just are sending the feed you've got. And we spend hundreds of hours building these services for online because we just, believe it's worth it. But we also just go, I use the TED Talk example. You guys are familiar with TED Talks?
Yeah.
So TED Talks about 10, 12 years ago were real popular. And it's someone walking around on a stage, for those who aren't familiar, and sort of, talking to the room. They kind of start off with a funny thing, a funny story, and then they go, hey, blah, blah, and then try and give some information or a concept or change somebody's mindset. So on a purely non-spiritual level, that and a sermon looks very similar visually and relationally. And so, like, should we just have somebody talking to the room, or what are the media consuming? Like, do you guys consume any media outside of like online? Do you guys do like Instagram or TikTok or any of that kind of stuff?
So I used to be pretty big on Instagram, and then I actually went on like an Instagram fast for one of my New Year's resolutions. I'm still off of it because it was really good for me to have that much extra time.
You found how much extra time
yeah,
you
I was
had?
kind of like, wow. But something I do now is like I listen to like a lot of Spotify and like
yeah.
podcasts and stuff on there.
Yeah.
And so I definitely, for someone like, especially like I'm on the move a lot. And so a lot of my kind of like relaxation downtime is like in the car, going between places, or like, okay, I'm at a 15-minute break of homework, gonna go make myself some food, and like I'll listen to something real quick in between. And so for me, having stuff that's storytelling, engaging, but without having to like be watching a screen and focus is really helpful.
That's cool. I love that.
I'm not much on social media.
Not much on social
I
media.
just scroll, and that's pretty much
Yeah.
it.
But do you like the type of content you consume? Like, what do you like to watch on social media?
Cheer videos.
Cheer videos.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Research.
I'm always looking for
That's actually pretty
creative
smart.
stunts and things like that.
Yeah.
It's always usually work related.
Yeah.
That's pretty much. And with Facebook, it's just keeping up with family and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it.
My thing was TikTok for a while, and I my
my friends send me
ADHD,
so many TikToks.
I'd get stuck on TikTok, and it's
Lose
all
hours of your life.
Yeah.
Oh, you did. I finally had to put it like in a secure folder with like the password being like, I will not open this until I've done 1 hour of this today.
Yeah.
And that was the last time I opened TikTok because I never like I was like, oh, that
Yeah,
you know,
you realize how much time.
you
Because
have.
it's so easy just to get sucked in like the doom scroll or whatever
Totally.
they call it. Yeah.
And so we look at the culture around us, we see that's a lot of what people are consuming stuff on social media. And it's a lot of like sort of face to face, like a person talking to a camera or podcast style where it's like you're kind of like the third or fourth person in the room, it
Yeah,
feels
100%.
like.
More like a home feeling.
Home
to
feeling,
it.
yeah. And so again, it's not a criticism of their churches, like going back to the live stream, but I just said like for us, we suddenly saw there's thousands of people that are engaging with us. And yet all of us in the church world just went to this like talking to the person at home because we had to. And then we all kind of went back to the thing that's easy to do because we don't have a lot of money at churches a lot of times. And I go, but it seems like there's a niche that we're missing of this content that's directed to a home viewer, a home user of like how, and it being shareable, it being relational is the hope. And what if we grew people in an online world to hopefully feel like they're part of a church online? And so that's what was kind of cool. There's some ways that I loved hearing about in your story that you've been utilizing it in your life with your boyfriend.
Yeah, so my boyfriend and I met in Virginia in college, but he's originally from Georgia, and then his work moved him to Nebraska. So every week we watch church together, basically, online, kind of whenever we can throughout the day, because time zone differences and whatnot. But then that night we go through like this week's Food for Thought. It's for like the groups. They put it on like questions and stuff, and we kind of just like talk about the sermon, and we go through those questions, read the Bible, and then we like pray together and finish it out. And so it's been really good for us to kind of have that just like, I don't know, moment in our weeks where it kind of refocuses us. And it's helpful too, because he travels and has to drive a bunch for his job. So finding kind of a home church is also very challenging for him. But then when he comes and visits me in Arizona, we go in person, so he gets that experience, right?
Yeah.
But I know, like, sharing with my friends, because, like, during COVID, like you said, it was just kind of like they were on a stage and we had, like, the 5 songs.
Yeah.
And I had to, like, because I have some friends that I've, like, tried to get them to come to church and, like, talked about Jesus, but they would, like, not step foot in a church. But they were open to the online campus. And so they'd watch it with me. And seeing the responses of kind of the more individualized, like online, like, hey, thank you for joining us today, you know, yada, 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 and very focused and clean. And with the one worship song instead of the 5, it was very different. They were a lot more responsive to just like the online service. And so that's been really cool because I've been able to expose people that, like I said, wouldn't step foot in a church to church, and they really vibed with it. So I'm appreciative that we have this platform because I do see it's reaching people that we wouldn't have reached before if we hadn't kind of changed the way we did things, right?
That's so cool. I love that. And you know what was neat is I ran into you at a fundraiser. We have friends that their kids attend your school, and your husband came up to me first and he's like, hey, are you Matt? And it's like this fundraiser. It was a bougie fundraiser. So I'm like in a suit and stuff. And he's like, my wife thought it was you, but I'm not sure. And you were taking care of something, I guess, at the moment.
I thought it was you, but then I heard your voice. I'm like, that's totally him.
I've seen him before.
And so for you, some of the ways that you found value in an online experience, like you shared, you come physically to the Pure Art campus sometimes, but and your husband was like, I come all the time. He was very clear to me
Yes,
on that. But what you shared with me, I thought was really cool in the ways that in your busy schedule, some of the ways God's using in your life.
Yeah, so everything that we do, I'm not home a lot, and on Sundays he will get up and go to church, and I will stay home and I'll watch. Typically Sunday mornings with my cup of coffee. But the thing I like about it so much is you had mentioned earlier about being engaged. So I feel like I really get to be engaged more when I watch online. I will pause it. I take notes, and I'll take notes because they're things that will hit me and resonate, and then I want to be able to bring it to either my team or even at school and reminisce.
That's
at
amazing.
church on Sunday, I heard this really great sermon, and they were talking about, and I can talk about it with the kids, and but that's what I really like about the online is I feel more engaged than when I'm actually sitting here.
That's cool.
And to be vulnerable, it's like I can start crying, and there are times where things hit deep.
Yeah.
And when you're at home in your own, where here I would be like, oh, I don't want to see anything.
Sure.
Trying to
Yeah, trying to like.
Yeah,
100%. It's I can just feel the moment instead of having to guard the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's amazing. Thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that, because that's, you're letting God do some deep processing work in those moments. You'd also, I as we first sort of talked to you, it almost felt like you were felt a little guilty that you hadn't come to church, and you're like, but you got to understand, I'm working all these hours and I'm doing all this. And I'm like, God, you don't gotta tell me. Like that's what it's there for.
Yeah.
But I think that can be kind of the thing we can fall into in Christianity of like, well, if I'm not in church, like
I'm
my
not in
faith,
the physical building.
my faith could only grow there. And we're seeing ways that like your relationships have been built, between you and your boyfriend, you and some of your friends that are close to God and some that are far away from God. And then you had shared with me also about some of the people in your family you've been able to share this with.
Yeah, so a lot of times when I watch the sermon, I'll just be thinking of my son, and my son isn't as connected in his faith as I would like him to believe or be. He tells me he's a believer, but I don't know if he's truly. I don't know where his walk is with in his faith. But there are some times that everything just hits so hard that I will send him the message and try to connect. So I try to have lunch with him once a week as well. And so it could be something that we can talk about and stuff like that.
I love
That's
that.
really cool.
That's so awesome. There is stuff that I think that the online campus can't replicate, right?
Right.
Or maybe I say replicate as effectively. There is a thing about people being right in front of us and being in our lives and being like, you matter, you care, do you need to talk? There is aspects of serving that I've tried to figure out online. Like, hey, so if you want to come, serving at pureart.org, we would love to have you serve on one of Pure Art's campuses. But also, if you live in Louisiana, find a resource center near you. If we're I know there's my sister, for example, she listens online quite a bit, but we're sort of like her secondary service. She has a church that she's connected to there. And so I'm like, hey, then go serve at a church that's in your community or one you are connected to. Because my goal with the online church is that it's not a end all, that it's a component, that it's a piece to people's faith. And in this new world we're living in that's getting weirder and weirder, and man, maybe we can be a light in the midst of that and a tool that people can use to grow their faith, God uses to bring closer to them, that he can work out deep processing things in our soul. And I know that as Dan has grown in this venue, I mean, in the beginning, he was like, this is so weird, just talking to a camera. Same for me. In the midst of, I remember the first recording we did when church was closed, I got super emotional as I was like, at this welcome, that's weird. Sorry, I got a little emotional on it because it just hit me. It's like that welcome to church tagline was something that like, I was battling with like, what does church mean right now? What does it look like? I'm a pastor at a church, and I'm trying to create something that is going to be meaningful for people at this moment. But is it? What are we doing? And again, we struggled with that sort of thing. Like, we're just standing here, as Pastor Bob would say, don't hear what I'm not saying, but faking it for a room. We're pretending that you're here, and we're trying to engage in worship. We're trying to engage with the home audience, but it was such a shift to what we'd been used to of what we thought church would look like. And so I'm writing up this script to like, what I want to say to people, what matters. And I was like, at the end, I just felt like I was supposed to say this, welcome to church, because that's what it was. It's like, look, it's different. Church isn't in the building. Church is the people you're dealing with, the people your families you're connecting to, the things that God's doing deep inside of us. That is aspects of the church. And this is one way that, again, church has changed so many times. We don't have a bunch of monks showing up or whatever. We don't have the big pipe organ in the back. You think about the changes church has experienced. And what is the key things that matters? Well, it's our relationship with God and our growth in faith and worship and prayer. And so that's been what's cool, is to try and just say, what does that look like? And I don't think we've arrived. I always tell people, like, if you've got, podcast at pureart.org, if you got ideas for the podcast, same with like, if you've got something for an online campus, like, send it to us, because we're constantly trying to do new things of like, how can we engage with young people? You're how old?
I'm 23.
23. So like, you're in this younger group of people that, man, their life is consumed.
Oh, just on the phone, yeah.
On the phone. And so how can we be like one piece of a light to that? And things like this podcast is trying to be one more element. And there's other things we've got kind of in the hopper that we won't release yet, soon to come, but trying to be, again, a tool to continue to pour into people's lives no matter where they're at. I mean, I've always said the weird thing is like, Germany is apparently our second biggest online church audience, which I speak a little bit of German, so I was like, oh yeah, Guten Tag, wie geht es Ihnen? But obviously I'm not doing that on a normal thing, so there's maybe a lot of English speakers there that are connecting with it, that the church experience, whether it's Catholic or sort of over there, as one of my German family members said, over here it's Catholic, you go and pray to the priest, and tell him your sins, or you just bow your head and pray in church if you're Protestant. Otherwise, for many of the churches there, that's sort of what it looks like. And so being able to be a part of, pouring out to these churches. What are some of the things that you feel like God's done in your life as you've been watching online? What are some things that God's shown you over the last few years?
I would say for me, because I definitely felt like a little bit of that guilt of like, oh, I'm not going to church on a Sunday. And especially like here being at med school, because I moved back home. And it's like all my family still goes in person. But for me, I went in person like the first few weeks. So I was like, oh, it's nice to be back home. But and then I moved to the online campus just because I don't really get much alone time at the house, and that's something I need.
Yeah.
And so like you said, I come home, like I watch church with my cup of coffee, and I'm able to just like me and God just handling it. And I think one thing that God really has shown me through that is that like I don't like, I'm obviously like, you're always pursuing God, but like God comes to you, God's also pursuing you. And for me, that's kind of what the reflection of the online church is that like we're putting ourselves out there. We're pursuing the people that may not come physically to a church, and that there shouldn't be any guilt in that. Like, this is also perfectly fine, because this is how I'm meeting God, what's the place that's right for me. And then obviously like when Dan has like the different sermons and you have little things that God like pokes your heart at and different things that he's shown me throughout it. But I think that's been the big one, is that like church doesn't have to be this classical, you go, you praise, you take communion, you talk to people, and you leave. Yeah. It can be something that I can rewatch 2-3 times throughout the week to really just kind of let it kind of go over. It doesn't have to be something that's within a building, because, the Holy Spirit's not just within a building, that's right? True. He's out and working wherever. Yeah. So that's been kind of cool to see that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I'm at my 4th year at NVCA, and which
is the
school I work at.
The Christian school you work at.
Yeah. And I'm kind of like a closet Christian at first, but people kept trying to pull things out of me. But I really feel like watching online has, you won't believe this because I was so shy coming in here, but when I'm in front of the kids, when I'm given a challenge to speak in front of people and talk about my faith and God and my relationship, I think the online campus has deepened my connection, has deepened my love for the Lord, has been able to let me connect with kids on a different level. And that's what I appreciate the most, because when I'm sipping my cup of coffee and I'm watching online and I can connect it to my son, or, talk about it with my daughter when she was in school, to me, it's that relationship. It's furthering the kingdom, and I wouldn't have been able to do that unless I really felt like I was more secure with my relationship with God. So that's how the online campus has really helped me.
Yeah,
That's very cool.
To me, it's just more intimate.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. Both you guys, it's fun to be able to have people face to face, because I don't get to see a lot of the people face to face. I'll be chatting with them for prayer requests and stuff.
Yeah.
If they watch our main pureheart.org page when a service is happening on our campus, we can accept prayer requests and stuff. But to create something that we put out there on YouTube and we go, this is something we're trying to create from people who are strong in their faith, people who are just starting to figure out their faith, people who are wanting to grow in their faith, people who have no faith, and they just clicked on a thumbnail. And like I said, we're constantly trying to figure out and pray and go, God, give us wisdom as to what this looks like. How do you meet all those audiences? Because all of those needs are so different. But it's been exciting to just see that journey that God's been taking us on. So thank you guys for both being willing to come
for sure.
in,
Thanks for having
share,
us.
and I love to hear it. Love to have you guys as part of the online campus congregation.
Yeah.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much again for listening in with us. We've had a great time making this podcast, and this actually marks episode 15, which is the end of our first season. So we're going to take a small break from now until August 13th when we start our next podcast up, as we kind of go back to our Heart Cruise season. And so I think it's going to be a great time. We've got some great episodes that are going to be coming up that you're not going to want to miss. So we hope you have a great time on the summer break, and we will see you on August 13th. Thanks so much for tuning in. We love you, Pure Heart family.